Boom shakalaka, ladies and gents, freaks and geeks, beautiful brothers and sisters around the world, lovers and children. It is your boy, Krishool, aka the Esoteric Noetic, aka the Chocolate Nubian Soul Brother from Ghana, West Africa. You know, you can rely on me because I'm on team. Meh, I'm true blue, mate. I always do as I'm told. I'm not one of these black sheep. I am a believer that whatever everyone else says is what I do. I'm all about tribalism. I don't like thinking for myself. And I think you should all just listen to whoever you think is going to be the most popular. Yeah, mate. Don't listen to this if you're a thinker and you're one of these crazy individualists. I'm all about doing whatever the empire tells me to do. So you guys don't have to monitor me now. Trust me, I'm on your side. With that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, let's get it. Let's have a look at what is going on in geopolitics right now. Trump mania has started off the year, and let's hear what Fox News has to say about it. Boom.
President Trump set on making Greenland part of the United States, saying that owning the island is critical for protecting the West against Russia and China. Trump writing on Truth Social saying that, quote, NATO should be leading the way for us to get it. The alliance is far more effective with Greenland in the hands of the United States. But Denmark has owned the territory for hundreds of years and isn't budging after a meeting with J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio at the White House. The president says all options on the table.
You are saying that you would potentially acquire Greenland by force. That would be a NATO country. The United. Are you saying that? Would you do that?
No, you're saying that.
Would you
I didn't say it. No, you're telling me that that's what I'm going to do. You don't know.
What? For the last few weeks, I mean, NATO has been reacting to Donald Trump openly saying that he's going to acquire Greenland, no matter what. It's going to be done the easy way or the hard way, I quote, right? And he's effectively said that, look, he would like to acquire this thing. He would like to buy it. It would be a lot easier, but, it doesn't necessarily have to be done that way. And, of course, he's been floating this idea around for a long time, right? I know before he ran for POTUS second time, right? He went on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast and mentioned that he had this interest in acquiring Greenland. And I think he floated around the idea that he may not necessarily have to buy it, but I don't think anyone was taking the idea seriously that the United States of America would invade a sovereign Western NATO country. But he has basically said that he is going to acquire it one way or the other, and that he has said that ultimately he will acquire this thing. And what that leads any sane person, I think, into being logical, not living in this world where anything can mean anything, right, is that if a country doesn't want to sell it, which Greenland has expressed, which Denmark has expressed, then the only other alternative would be to coerce them unlawfully through force to actually give up that land, which would be the definition of force, right? Of course, Donald Trump wanting to cover himself because there's been such a backlash, right? Because over the last few days, these NATO countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, France, that's nuclear power, Germany, Dunka, these guys are actually on the right side of history this time. And I think Canada and other NATO nations have basically, including Britain, right, they've sent at least one troop. I think France has sent like 14 or 15, but they have shown that they are willing to challenge the United States by sending troops to defend Greenland because of what Donald Trump has said. And obviously this wouldn't be an issue if Donald Trump was saying, well, listen, I'm going to do everything I can to buy this, but he's basically said that he's going to own this one way or another and has said that he's not ruling out, well, at least he implied, I would think at the very least, that he's not ruling out force. And now he's playing the political game where he's saying, well, actually, I didn't say I was going to attain it by force. Which is interesting because he hasn't said in this moment that he's not going to use force. He's basically just leaving everything up in the open and saying, well, you don't know what I'm going to do. I could do anything. I mean, what a sick game to play. Imagine if you had a relationship with someone and, I mean, it was just obvious you're not going to shoot each other, right? And you said, hey, listen, at some point, I'm going to have sex with you. And I'm going to do it one way or another. And if I'm not ruling out the fact that I'll rape you. I am going to do it. I'm not saying I'm going to rape you, but I might. Imagine just leaving that in the air, just leaving that, saying something like that, and the effect it has. So now we're supposed to be comfortable even with the potential that you haven't ruled out using force in order to do this thing. You're willing to actually use this force, even though you're saying that you're not going to, or at least this is what you're saying now, or you're not going to. But just the idea of having that simmering in the conversation is enough to do the tremendous damage that we are seeing being done to the NATO alliance. And this is not an acceptable thing by any stretch of the imagination. But anyway, let's continue. Let's see how Trump tries to justify all of this kind of stuff.
You know what I'm going to do? Greenland's very important for the national security, including of Denmark. And the problem is, there's not a thing that Denmark can do about it if Russia or China wants to occupy Greenland.
All right, I want to get.
I love. So there's not a thing that Denmark can do about it if China or Russia decides to occupy Greenland. Well, I disagree. The fact that they have the NATO alliance, I mean, the whole idea of being part of NATO, from what I understand, right, and I don't think anyone is disputing this, is that if a NATO nation gets attacked, all the other NATO nations are going to come together and intervene. So that's a non-argument. And the argument that Russia and China want to take over Greenland, they haven't openly said that. I mean, this is the problem I have with this whole idea of like national security threats. People have taken this idea. This is all stemming from the idea of natural rights, like natural law, right? The idea is if someone is actively threatening you, right, that would be an actual security issue, right? If someone is saying, for instance, what Trump is doing, you know what? I'm going to acquire Greenland, and I'm going to do it one way or another, and I'm not leaving force out of the equation, right? It's basically saying that listen, man, I'm going to get this country one way or the other. That is an actual threat. Now, if you're appealing to what might happen, this appeal of potentiality, and you're just concerned about what may eventually come into fruition, right? That China or Russia may at some point get a hold of a piece of land that you think is very essential, and therefore you decide to say that's a threat. That's not an actual threat. That is an appeal to your fear of what might happen. These are very, very different world views, perceptions. But what the national security state have done, the United States namely, is they have broadened the whole concept of threat, the classical understanding of threat, to include anything. From the United States perspective, everything is a threat. What if someone speaks out and they speak poorly against the United States of America? They're obviously a threat. What if a country decides to nuke the United States, even though they're the only ones that have really nuked anyone, right? Well, they're a threat, so we need to get rid of them. What if China or Russia decide to take over Greenland when they haven't openly expressed that? Now, granted, there have been ships that have been appearing around the area trying to do some kind of business. I know China has been conducting business, or was on the verge of conducting business with Greenland, and there is a legitimate concern that if Greenland decides to lend money to China through some kind of business, and Greenland's not able to pay, then China may eventually try to gain access to resources, similar to what the U.S. does in a lot of these dealings with other third world nations and so forth, right? Try to gain hold of their resources when they're not able to pay the debts and so forth, right? But that's a fear of what might happen. The idea of using the current situation as an actual threat and saying it's a national security issue, this is the highest level of disingenuous political bullshit that is used to justify the most horrific violations of freedom. And this is why I have so much issue with the United States of America, but so many countries around the world, but typically the United States of America, using this argument of national security in order to invade countries. Yeah, it would be good for the United States, arguably, if they were to acquire Greenland. It may be a national security issue in the sense that, hey, look what, if they acquired Greenland, from the worldview that, look, they would have more ability to defend themselves. The United States could set up this golden dome and so forth. Yeah, but that doesn't, one, give you the right to invade a country just because of what might benefit you, not by any classical standard of actual law, based on the United States law, right? I'm talking about from what this country was founded on, the whole concept of natural justice. And from an international law standpoint, unequivocally, unassailably, definitively, the United States does not have the right to invade a sovereign country. But this is the argument that has been made time and time again. It would benefit the United States. And when people make arguments like this, right, I mean, I do respect, I don't respect, that wouldn't be the right word. I understand that they have this worldview where basically they're moral relativists. They're power-hungry imperialists that believe they can own anything if it's going to benefit them. That makes you no different to Homelander, really. But of course, he's a fictitious character. I think the United States is a great representation of that, right? And what's interesting is that at least Homelander tries to give this perception that he's a good guy. I don't think any sane person in the world really looks at the United States as being the good guys in this picture right now. Any person with even a modicum of intelligence realizes that they really are the empire. They really are the villain. And they're just trying to expand their control. They believe that they are doing this for the interests of the world, for establishing peace. But we all know that they are the empire. And we don't really even buy that argument that they're doing for peace. They're doing this because they want power. Because with power comes the ability to do what the fuck you want, even more so. And this is where we are at.
Get into this. Brian, you said something last hour where you said that this is Trump. He doesn't actually put things out on True Social that maybe he thinks he can do. We talked about how he wants to do a True Social, capping credit cards at 10% and naming, was it John or Jim? John Harbaugh,
that's right. Yeah.
To the Giants, and he doesn't really influence those, but he puts some things out there. Is this the same to you or different?
No, different.
Why?
I think he's serious. Greenland matters. It matters to China and Russia, and therefore matters to us. Look, this is not, this is where you kind of have to put polite conversation aside, okay? If Greenland is that strategic, and I think it is, then you kind of have to say to Denmark, you can't do the job.
Oh, how about that?
Denmark is just...
I love, of course I'm being facetious, but it's just the insanity of saying, hey, listen, I don't think you're good enough to be able to do the job, so I'm just gonna violate you. I'm just gonna take over. I don't think you guys are intelligent enough to be able to think and make decisions about your country. So you know what? I'm going to do it for you. Nothing says tyrant better than saying, hey, listen, I just don't think you're capable of defending yourself. Even though Denmark does have NATO, even though I would think the Danish people are probably more well informed about the world than most average Americans, right? However, the United States government is still going to be the one that applies force, applies power, tells people that they just don't know enough about the situation, they're not wise enough, tells people that they're not powerful enough, and make this argument as justification for the use of force, the use of violence, right? And, you know, I've had many conversations with people about this, right? And the frustrating thing is the only way you can justify this kind of stuff, right, is the tool that all dictators have used throughout history, right? It is the plea of every tyrant, every conqueror, every madman. And it's hard for me to realize that so many people have such a low understanding of this argument that they seem to weave it into every conversation and try to be moralistic. It's a different conversation if you're saying this is about survival, this is about might is right, if you have a conqueror mentality, right? Like people like that are not even pretending to be good people. They're just doing things because they want to win, right? And if this is the game you play, very different conversation. But if you were playing this game from the perspective that you have to have the higher moral ground, you can't make the argument that you get to do something like invade a sovereign nation because you think it's going to be better for the world. You can't. In the same way, I can't make the argument that, look, it would be better for me if I just rape this person, right? Because, look, we have a serious threat right now, and the only way we can ensure that we have enough people in order to fight off the Iraqis or Iranians or whatever threat might be looming is if I rape this person, we have lots of kids. It's going to be much better. And obviously they can't defend them. And look, unless, of course, I rape them, right? Well, this Chinese person over here is going to rape them, or this Russian person is going to rape them, even though they haven't expressed any interest in raping this country, or this woman, right? Let's call her Green Tina, all right? But this is the mentality of people that adopt this argument, right? That I have to rape her because the other people are going to rape her. And what's funny is that China and Russia have only said that, look, it's an issue if the United States rapes Greenland because they don't want the United States to have this power. But they're quite happy to stay away and not take over any lands. But it's the United States that is being the aggressor and making the worst argument that unless, of course, I rape her, someone else will rape her. And from a moral standpoint, you can't hold a higher ground if you make arguments like that. You just sound like a conquering psychopath. But it seems so many people are so illiterate to this point that they somehow think that this is an acceptable argument in the realm of discourse. This is the kind of stuff you say when you don't care about backlash. But you make an argument like this in the open world, and you're basically outing yourself as being a dictator, as being a psycho. And this is what so many people are relying on. They have this militaristic worldview where they think they can justify anything they want because, well, it's in the interest of national security. That's absolutely unwise, stupid, and batshit intellectually dishonest.
Not capable of defending Greenland, developing Greenland, and I don't think governing the parts of that island that have to be governed to keep China and Russia at bay. They can't do it.
Okay, then why don't you just help them do it? I mean, the United States already has access to Greenland. They've already forged these agreements where they can defend Greenland if they want to. They could do everything that they are doing without owning the country, without raping them. It's like, hey, look, I see my friend over here, they're in a lot of danger. I really don't want you to get attacked because if you get attacked, it's going to affect my entire hemisphere and so forth. So, hey, same thing to do is to try to help them, help their defenses. But what Trump is actually suggesting is, you know what? I'd rather just own them. I'd much rather just have control completely, utterly, right? Even though I have the ability to defend the country and do that lawfully, I'd much rather just assert my will and just own the country because it's much better to own them. I'm a real estate mogul, and I'd much rather just own someone rather than actually work with them and cooperate with them because that's how I feel.
Is that our job to decide who can or cannot do it?
I'll tell you what is our job. Our job is to defend American interests.
Oh, I love the pivot. This is what politicians and psychopaths do all the time. Rather than addressing a question squarely, honestly, and saying that, well, maybe it's not our job to enforce our will on a sovereign nation through force, right? They'll say, well, it's our job to defend ourselves. And that would mean you defend yourselves lawfully without initiating violence. But what you're actually implying by saying that it's your job to defend the national security is that you can do anything you want if you perceive that somewhere down the line it's going to lead to the best outcome. And that includes raping a country. That includes acts of war and everything that you can subjectively justify in order to achieve your ends. And only momos make arguments like that. And people that throw this argument at me and try to somehow convince me that this is an insane thing, you're only outing yourself as being a tyrant or being a moron. Or just having a completely different worldview, which is fine. You're entitled to your worldview, but just to be clear, I do not want to live in the same hemisphere as you with that kind of mentality, because that's the mentality of all the dictators and dishonorable people in the world. And I'd be thinking, how do I even go to business with someone that has that mentality, let alone live with someone like that, knowing that ultimately, at the end of the day, they can always say, listen, I think it's in the best interest for me to violate this contract, to freaking just rape you, because I think it's going to be for the best outcome. It's going to serve me, which is eventually going to serve the world. So I'm just going to violate Article 5. I'm just going to take over your country. I'm going to do whatever I need because it's in the interest of national security. That's the mentality of these tyrannical misfits.
National security. This is Western Hemisphere stuff, okay? That doesn't mean we take it over. I'm not saying we take it over.
Then what do you say? Okay, then what do you say? I mean, okay. What are you saying then? Well, I think let's not take it over. Let's just invade. Like, what? If you're saying you're not going to take it over, there is no issue. So what the fuck are you saying? This is how politicians speak. They speak in hidden language when they imply violence without actually saying violence because they're trying to cover their shady asses.
But I do think, people are getting all upset at Trump because he's playing hardball with Denmark, okay? I'm happy he's playing hardball with Denmark. I want him to do that. I don't think at the end of the day we got to take it over militarily.
Okay, so we're on the same page. Don't take it over militarily. If hardball means you tell them, listen, I want this thing, I really want this thing, and you keep on nagging them even though they said no, and if you want to apply your tariffs, right, then that's your prerogative. In the same way that, look, if I want to do business with someone, if I want to buy someone's house, and if they don't sell me their house, I tell them that if they want to interact with me, I'm going to charge them $10 anytime they want to talk to me or have any kind of interaction with me. That's fair enough if they want to go along with that. But I don't get to use force. There's no issue here. The issue, at least from the Western world's perspective, is the fact that you're threatening to use force. Do you guys understand that? For the Trump supporters out there that are all kind of like, America F here. This is why so much of the world hates you guys, hates America, because of the disingenuous BS that your politicians spread and your warmongering mentality of wanting to invade countries and all doing under this appeal to making the world a better place.
Got to send a message. We're not doing the same thing we've always been doing because China and Russia aren't doing the same thing they've always been doing.
Well, what does that mean? I'm not doing the same thing we're always doing. So listen, if we can acquire it fairly, but we're not going to do the same thing. We got to play hardball. So what does playing hardball mean? Okay, so China and Russia, apparently they're not doing this fair. Well, China and Russia, they're not doing anything that is violating international law by threatening to invade countries. China and Russia are not saying, hey, look, you know what? We're going to drop bombs on Greenland or anything like that. No. So what is hardball to you? If you want to buy the country, buy the country. If you want to put tariffs in play, if you want to sanction Greenland, by all means. But to be floating this idea up in the clouds that you want to acquire Greenland, you're going to do it by any means necessary, and you're going to do it the easy way or the hard way, and you're not ruling out military force, which is what Donald Trump has at the very least been implying, then you're basically threatening these people. Now you're playing this game where you're saying, well, I don't want to invade, but look, we can't be doing what we've always done. So what's the alternative? You want to actually start using physical force, make this a kinetic war? You're implying this without actually saying it, and that is the behavior of a politician.
And we can't sit back. This is Monroe Doctrine stuff. We've always thought about that going south, but it's true going north as well.
Okay, so you've just implied that the Monroe Doctrine, in the minds of these people, because from what I understand, the Monroe Doctrine is this agreement that, look, we're not going to bring about any more expansionism if you guys stop expanding over here. It's not this idea, and granted, we acknowledge that there is this sphere of influence, but what we're not going to do is start conquering these countries, right? This is from what I understand, but the mentality of Trump, and I think most people when they use the Monroe Doctrine, is this idea that, listen, if I consider an area being necessary for national security, I'm going to expand the empire. I'm going to take control of this thing, and I'm going to acquire this through any means necessary, which obviously means kinetic violence, kinetic force. So this guy's basically contradicting himself. Like, he's playing this airy-fairy game where he's on one hand saying, hey, listen, I'm not saying we use a military intervention, but I'm saying we apply the Monroe Doctrine, right? Which in the minds of most people is we actually expand through military conquest and actually take control of this land. This is the dangerous bullshit game that these politicians play. And when you're dealing with people like this, you have to be able to call them out for what they're saying. Like, I hate the fact that this guy can't just say, hey, listen, yeah, I want to use military force, but is trying to play this game where he's on one hand saying, look, I'm not against violations of the Article 5. I'm not against I don't want to be a bully, but on the other hand, he's saying, yeah, you know what? I am going to be a bully.
Love having you here. Desperate for your thoughts.
Yeah, so something is rotten in Denmark, literally, because it makes no sense for them not to want to do a deal with the United States. Okay,
it makes no sense. How about they want to be independent and they don't want to come under the enslavement of a country that has a reputation for dropping bombs on so many people around the world? I would fight tooth and nail not to be in the empire of the United States because I don't want to be associated with anything like that. It's kind of like a fucking murderer or a pedophile saying, hey man, why don't you want me to be friends with you? Like, it makes no sense. I can better protect you. Yeah, but Maybe they just don't want to be associated with you. Have you ever thought of that? The lack of imagination for so many Americans not to realize why a country like Greenland doesn't want to be part of the United States is part of the problem. It's like, well, I can't understand why. Why wouldn't you want to be part of the U.S.? America has this twisted understanding that the world seems to love the United States, when the reality is most of the world doesn't want to have anything to do with the U.S. because we realize that they really are the instigators of violence. They are the empire. They are part of the leading the axis of evil. So, now granted, you might not agree with that. That's your prerogative, but you should at least have the foresight to understand why a country doesn't want to be associated with the U.S. Whereas I have the foresight to understand why Americans want to own Greenland. It makes perfect sense. Like, national security, more defense, and more power, and so forth. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it's right for you to own it. And whereas I can understand that you would want it, I can also understand Denmark not wanting you to have control over their country, particularly when you already have an agreement where you guys get to defend them anyway. So what are they getting out of it? These people are so retarded.
Going to take over $100 billion of capital expenditures to be able to extract the oil, extract the minerals. Denmark doesn't have that type of money, and if they were going to do something, they would have already done it.
So your argument now is that, well, we have more ability to extract all the minerals and what we need in order to benefit the country, so make use of all your resources, and you don't have what is necessary in order to do that, when in reality, it is actually possible. For Greenland has this in place where countries can actually get a license to mine and extract these resources, and obviously they take a fraction of it. Wouldn't it make sense that a country would much rather do that rather than just giving ownership of their country to an empire like the United States and have to deal with them threatening to do who the hell knows what later down the line, like tax the citizens 50% of their shit and apply all kinds of draconian measures later down the line that may not apply to them in the next 10 years, on the next 50, but later on to the generations of their children and so forth. It makes perfect sense that people wouldn't want to do that. That's why I get so frustrated when people seem to lack the imagination to at least understand why someone may not want to go to business with them or want to become part of the American empire. It's obvious that people don't really like the United States. And unless, of course, you are so disconnected from reality, you should be aware of that.
Okay, and we're so used to looking at a map like this, when the reality, the Earth is a globe. And so...
No, it's not. The Earth is flat. No. No, that's one thing a lot of the conservatives have over... Actually, no, what am I saying? That's actually not true. Whereas there are a lot of conservatives that seem to subscribe to that worldview and leftists. But at least this guy is on the same page in regards to the facts about what's going on with the globe, right? So it's, just for the record, no, it's not flat.
All of Russia's strategic military assets are in that northern part of the globe next to Finland, right? All their ballistic missiles, all their submarines, okay, all their deadly warships, it all exists up there. And any sort of ballistic missile attack from Russia comes right over Greenland. And to be able to set up this golden dome or to intercept those missiles, you want to get it at the crest in the air, which you're much better positioned from Greenland than anywhere else.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, it'd be great. It would be great to take hold of that. You know what would be great? It would be great for me to be able to have any girl I want just come over randomly and then obviously satiate my appetite in whatever way I want, all right? But it doesn't mean I get the right to do that just because it would be a benefit to me. I mean, what kind of nonsense is this? It could benefit us in so many ways. Yeah, of course it could. And it would make perfect sense if you bought that. But here's the thing. They don't want to sell it. So what are you going to do about it? That's the real question. What the fuck are you going to do when someone doesn't want to have sex with you? What are you going to do? Are you going to rape them? Well, that's the mentality of these imperialist psychopaths, right? Now, granted, some of them are not actually saying this, but we all know this is what they're actually doing. This is what the United States has done time and time again. The only difference right now is that, on one hand, at least in some aspects, Trump is being a bit more transparent about it as far as his interest in taking over Venezuela, but I think there's a lot more going on than what he's officially saying. And then here, because he doesn't want to suffer the repercussions of perhaps being impeached, he's not saying directly that he's going to invade Greenland, but he is implying it in every way possible by saying that he's going to get Greenland one way or the other. It's going to be the easy way or the hard way. And look, as long as you're not going to violate them, no one really cares. As long as you're not going to drop bombs on them, as long as you're not going to kidnap their presidents and so forth, by all means, But you certainly do not have any grounds to invade the country. And I think any person that's being rational acknowledges that.
On Earth, okay? Additionally, China, so the North Pole where Santa is fine, but around him, it's breaking up. And so you're going to start to see massive Chinese tankers travel through there delivering goods to Europe, which means there's a high probability that Chinese submarines are already navigating the waters out there. So the bigger so it's directly in NATO's interest for the U.S. to have a controlling interest.
Okay, why would it be okay, here's the thing. NATO is an alliance. The United States, even though I'd argue it shouldn't be, based off of Donald Trump threatening to invade Greenland, is part of NATO. Why does this country need to be directly owned by the United States in order for Denmark, in order to have greater protection? Everything, if the United States empire wants to protect Greenland, it can do so through the aid of NATO. It can do so more effectively if it's working with NATO. This argument that it needs to be owned by the United States in order to be properly defended, that holds no weight. The only justification for wanting to own Greenland is to be able to do whatever you want with it outside of your goals to actually defend Greenland. It's all about what's in the best interest for the United States, not what's in the best interest for NATO or the world at large. The only reason, I think anyway, rationally, that the United States wants to own Greenland as opposed to just defend it is because it wants what is best for the United States of America. So absolutely, if you're the kind of person that has this warmongering, imperialist mentality where all you care about is the glory of Rome, the glory of the empire, by all means, be a douchebag, be a psychopath, be a tyrannical leader, a dictator that only cares about your tribe. But for the rest of the world that still has some respect for international law and natural justice and aren't psychopaths and don't believe that might is right and that you can do anything you want in the interest of national security, which basically says, I'm doing this because I feel like doing it because I think it's in the best interest of me. We do not believe in that kind of mentality.
There, it's directly in Greenland's interest because they're never going to be able to mine it, and you could get as many as 500 million barrels a year of oil out of there, so they're never going to profit from it. So their politicians are likely.
This is like a guy being envious of some man's wife, and that man isn't making enough use of his wife. He's saying, listen, man, Listen, if I had your wife, I could rape her like every year. If I just raped your wife and we had all these kids, I could do so much good for the world. I mean, you look at you. You have a small dick. You can't do jack. You can't even have that many children. I'm virile. Why don't let me just take over your wife? And your wife is saying, but I do not want you. I don't want you. I don't like you. I don't want you to own me. I want to be with my man. He is a very nice man. That's me trying to do a Finnish or Danish accent, right? Or Greenlandish accent. But of course, the imperialist mentality of America is, well, I could do a much better job. It's all immaterial. I mean, unless, of course, you guys want to somehow convince Greenland to be bought. But all of this is immaterial unless you do that lawfully. But we all know you guys are hinting at the fact that you're trying to justify taking over this country, which is just not cool for any person or any country that has any respect for international law and justice.
Nord Stream 2 pipeline, one of the board members was Gerhard Schroeder, the former prime minister of Germany, was instrumental in setting that up before the Russians blew up their own pipeline. Something's wrong here. Trump is right to push this issue, and for people that look at this objectively, the U.S. is doing a good thing for the West, for the United States, and for the world.
Okay, but Jackie,
the U.S. is doing a good thing, arguably for itself, for the United States. But if that's it, acquires Greenland lawfully, if it is able to buy it. But if the United States of America invade Greenland, I would say it's doing a bad thing, obviously, for the world, because it's going to lead to NATO being broken. I mean, so much for the NATO alliance when a member of NATO is attacking a NATO country. But I'd argue it's doing a really bad thing for the United States because it's going to be hated. It's going to have countries hate it even more than it hates it right now, if you can even imagine that. And it's going to, I mean, the mentality of conquerors around other conquerors other than the United States. I mean, have a look at China and Russia. Why doesn't China just invade Taiwan right now? I mean, if the United States can do it, why the hell can't China? I mean, and the funny thing is the international community, United States to some extent, have been saying, well, obviously it's wrong for Russia to invade Ukraine, right? But the very justification that the United States is using to potentially, if you accept that Donald Trump has actually said that he's willing to actually use military force, right? And I think it's very indicative of the fact that he is willing to do so, just digressing a little, by the fact that after NATO nations decided to send troops to Greenland to defend it from an invasion, Donald Trump has responded by wanting to apply tariffs, right, on all of these nations like Germany, Norway, and Sweden. If he wasn't opposed to them defending it because he was never going to invade, it would never be an issue, right? And here's the thing, like it's just so obvious because it's not that these NATO nations are opposed to United States buying Greenland. This just shows the bullshit nature of the entire argument of Donald Trump, right? Because here's the thing, if the United States was simply willing to buy Greenland and would made that very clear and was going to do that through lawful means, the NATO nations would, they wouldn't be opposed to that. They just think, well, Greenland is either going to sell it to you or they're not going to send it to you. But the fact that you have implied that you're willing to actually use military action, right, has led the NATO troops to actually send troops to Greenland to prevent an invasion. And what you've done is you basically confirm their actions by responding with tariffs to these nations by saying, well, because you've done that, I'm going to put tariffs on you now, which only substantiates the idea that you were actually willing to use force. Because if you weren't willing to use force, it would have been a no-brainer. You would have said, hey, guys, I'm not going to use military action anyway, so there's nothing to worry about over here. But instead, he's just said, well, if you're opposed to the idea of the United States owning Greenland, well, we're going to put tariffs on you. NATO isn't opposed to that. NATO is opposed to the United States using force. You basically play yourself. And it seems that some people lack the intellectual honesty or just awareness to realize what is going on here. But I think, in fairness, I think everyone really, any thinking person is aware of the fact that the United States of America is trying to take control of Greenland through any means necessary. And that means Donald Trump is not ruling out kinetic warfare. But anyway, I digress here. What was I saying? Let's continue with this video.
Would say, we have NATO. This is why we have NATO. If someone attacks Greenland, NATO's involved. The U.S. will be involved in that. That is the precedent. We don't need to go in there now.
The woman is speaking sense. Absolutely. That is the precedent. A NATO nation, it's kind of like we're all part of this family, right? NATO nation. But America's saying, no, I'm empire. I get to do whatever I want. And no, I want to own the country because I want to own it. Because I just want to own it. Yeah, but you do realize that, we can still defend Greenland if any foreign country outside of NATO tries to do something. Nope, I want to own it because I'm America.
Preemptively. What do you say about that?
Well, we know the president doesn't really trust NATO, and a lot of people don't trust NATO, so I understand that.
Well, here's the thing. You're America, so if you don't trust NATO and it violated, you could just obliterate them, as opposed to saying, well, I don't trust them, so I'm going to obliterate a nation. It's one thing to not trust a nation, therefore respond accordingly, right, with actual appropriate actions, right, if they violate some kind of agreement. But for you to be the violator of the agreement because you don't trust someone, it's like me shooting someone in the face because I think somewhere down the line they might shoot me in the face. That makes you the bad guy. And that is the thinking of these imperialist douchebags that I most despise. They don't believe in actual ethics. They don't believe in any natural rights. As much as the United States proclaims to be this leader of freedom, I don't think they really understand what freedom is about. I don't think any of them care about the actual basis of freedom. As was written in the Declaration of Independence, all they care about is imperialism, power, safety. You should not be uttering the words safety and national security if you're someone that believes in freedom. All that makes you is a tyrant, someone that will use the ends to justify your goals.
And I don't dispute anything that Brian or Mike have said with respect to the importance of Greenland and the issue in general. The only thing that I'm concerned about right now is biting off a little bit more than you can chew. There is so much going on President Trump's plate. You know, he started when he came into office with his tariff agenda. That's not even finished yet. We're still waiting for the Supreme Court. He's working on the economy here at home, domestically, in other aspects as well. We were talking about inflation earlier in the program. When you look at his foreign policy strategy, while I applaud everything that he's done so far, it's extremely, extremely ambitious. We don't know what's going to end up happening with Venezuela. Iran is a tinderbox right now. Not sure, necessarily what he's going to do if he chooses to do something in that situation. And so I look at all these things and say he's definitely focusing on the right issues, but I worry that the administration and the country in general will sort of be spread a little bit too thin as it's tackling so much.
That's actually a really good point. For people that don't care about any of these arguments in regards to don't do something because it's the wrong thing to do, regardless of what your national security goals are interested in, from a practical standpoint, the United States is involved in quite a lot of wars right now. I mean, you have a look at what's going on in Iran. Apparently, the peaceful behavior of Donald Trump by dropping a bomb in order to create peace, it was not the most peaceful argument, you know? Kind of like how the smart bombs the United States was using during the Gulf War crisis that were supposed to be super, super peaceful and 99% accurate ended up being only like 1% accurate and created all of these dead people and led to a whole bunch of other problems, right? Not only people dying, but I'm sure they're going to be retaliatory responses, you know? I mean, this is the mentality of tyrants that don't realize that your actions have consequences. There's not only what's going on in Iran, obviously the situation in Venezuela, that could erupt and create more problems. I mean, people seem to think that it's always one-sided, you know, that if Venezuelans, my friend was telling me the other day that, look, Venezuelans, they all hate their leader. Ultimately, everyone is happy about it. Well, similarly, if someone kidnapped Donald Trump, you'd see at least half of the country that would be very happy about it, but another half probably would not be so happy about it. This is typically the case for most governments. The idea of making the argument that you see so many people happy doesn't really address anything. The fact is, if you respect these laws that we've set up in our civil society, we don't just invade countries without some kind of approval from Congress, because it's going to lead to more problems, and rightfully so. You really don't have any business interfering in their politics. And to make this whole well, you know, they're smuggling drugs. It's so easy for someone to drop some bullshit argument in order to justify invading a country like that. Oh, how about all the crimes that are committed by American gangsters all around the world, or all the political violence that is committed by the United States around the world? It'd be so easy to come up with that as a justification to invading the United States, right? It's just such a hypocritical mentality. So you have a look at that, and along with what's going on with ICE right now, right? The fact that the United States is being overrun by these Gestapo that are not even taking on the integrity to just show their faces, which is enabling them to behave like criminals and just beat the shit out of people, right? I mean, we have this whole situation. Obviously, a lot of Americans are not happy about it. They're protesting, rightfully so. The idea of just being detained in this country from a constitutional standpoint, from a natural rights standpoint, and someone just accosting you because they suspect that you might not be a citizen. This is the same national security bullshit argumentation, this train of thought where you're like, well, I think you might be a bad person. I think you might be doing something that's shady. So you know what? I'm going to pull you out of your home. I'm going to detain you, even if it ends up killing you. You know, I'm going to, I see you trying to run away, so I'm going to shoot you in the face. That mentality is the problem with the United States of America. But we have all of this stuff going on in the U.S., and then what you're going to do is you're going to fucking start another war? You're going to invade a country? Really? Does that seem like the best way of managing your resources? I don't think so.
And on that point, I think it's a great point, because I like the idea of making a move on Greenland. I think for all the reasons that Michael just went through, we clearly need the territory.
Can we not use words like making a move on Greenland? That sounds very militaristic. How about buying Greenland? I mean, no one would have issues with the United States if they're like, it's like, we really need to buy this country. Let's offer every citizen like $2 million, $3 million. Let's see if they take it. And you're going back and forth. Yeah, I would still be opposed to Greenland selling that to you. But hey, business is business. But the reality is that's not what is going on here. And it's so frustrating where you can see they're trying to create this narrative, right, that, oh, look, we're just interested in doing commerce with Greenland. But then they're speaking about this militaristically and trying to justify why it's so important for the United States to make a move on Greenland, and how they need to set up their dome, and how, look, we need to be playing hardball, when this is all leading to the unavoidable conversation that you're willing to use military force, which is what the United States has done time and time again. But then, meanwhile, as you're saying that, oh, no, look, we're not saying we're going to use military force. No, this is just a polite conversation. Bullshit.
It is a vulnerability when it comes to China and Russia. But the other thing, too, is that I don't know that it needs to be so urgent. One thing that China does so well is its central planning. And they plan not for continuing resolution to continuing resolution, or midterm to midterm, or 4-year cycles. They plan for centuries at a time. And when I hear about these plans about Greenland and what a strategic importance it is for us to have that territory to secure us from China and from Russia, I think that would be great right now, but it doesn't necessarily have to be right now. It could be in the next 10 years, 20 years, 25 years. So I try to be a little bit more flexible with the timeline. And frankly, we haven't heard a timeline from the president. He's talking about it with a sense of urgency, and we don't know that it is that urgent.
Yeah, I think it's urgent to Donald Trump, because he's trying to make a name for himself, even though he has a name for himself. He wants to be remembered as the president that was able to expand the imperialistic goals of the United States and claim Greenland. And I mean, that's the whole beauty of the system. At least one of the things that I can give a lot of respect to in the current system of the United States is that you have it in such a way where you don't allow tyrants to reign forever. You know, every few years, obviously, you switch powers. But obviously, what Donald Trump is trying to do at the moment is to try to extend his stay even beyond his constitutional right, and justify doing so. Once again, national security. It's the most despicable thing you can do as a president that is supposed to be interested in what's best for the country, to forward your own egoic agenda as opposed to what's best for the country. And of course, according to Donald Trump, I mean, I guess what's best for him is best for the country. So, of course, I'm sure he can justify everything he's doing in his own crazy worldview. But this is where we're at.
And so I wouldn't totally to anybody who's worried about the urgency, I wouldn't dismiss the idea,
right,
just because it seems like he wants to do it now.
I think the urgency to him is that he's got 3 years left, and
Absolutely.
He says to himself, if I don't do this now, it's never going to happen. And that's probably one of the pitfalls of our system here, our democratic system. While many things about it are wonderful, with the two parties pitted against each other and how that plays out over time, God knows where we're going to be in 20 years.
Damn straight. It would be really interesting to see how people react to Donald Trump doing this kind of shit, you know? Because, look, in his last term, I mean, you could still make the argument, in comparison, relatively speaking, to the other war hawks that we've seen as presidents of the United States, that he was more peaceful than his predecessors, right? But now you can't make that argument, you know? Because the one thing about re-election is that when you know that you still have to, you're going to be held accountable for all the crazy things you've done, there is this incentive to not act like a complete and utter tyrant, because some people that actually do value law and do actually have some sense of actual universal morality will not be in line with you just taking over countries and dropping bombs in countries in order to make America great again, right? And yeah, you're going to have to hold yourself accountable to them. But when you don't have to hold yourself accountable, you can just do anything you want. You have impunity, which these presidents do, right? And particularly in a situation like now when Donald Trump doesn't have to worry about re-election, you can pretty much just get away with murder. And that's the most disturbing thing about the situation right now. But what is interesting is recent polls have shown that more than 70% of people are against the United States invading Greenland, right? And then I think only 52% of people are, about 70% of people are against the United States invading Greenland, and then we have about 52% of people are strongly against it, I saw in a poll. But generally speaking, I think it's fair to say that most Americans are not down with the invasion of Greenland, which is somewhat reassuring. But the fact that even a small group of people are in favor of this expansionist mentality is only adding to this argument that America really is the great Satan, as so many other world leaders would refer to it as. It really is the empire. Now, granted, I'm not saying this about its people. I think we have to look at people individually, but granted that the president that you elect is often a manifestation of the collective will of the people. America has the right president for America right now, and that is very concerning, to say the very least.
And so in China, it's a little bit easier to do central planning that way because Xi Jinping is ruling with an iron fist, and you know, he kind of lays out the whole. And he
and Donald Trump isn't.
Plans not to give up power either. And so I just think that's what Trump is trying to do. I still say it's ambitious in 3 years to bite so much off. I commend him for wanting to make all these moves that would strengthen the United States. But I also worry about, Lydia, to that point, who will sort of carry the torch as we move forward. We've talked about the perils within the GOP party, the progressives and the Democrats, you know what their problems are. But people in this country need to get a little bit more on the same page about these priorities. I think that's what he's worried about.
He tries to put structural things in place so that whoever's next can't ignore it.
Right.
And the thing is, the people around, I don't think that Donald Trump is, that different in terms of his worldview. Like, there's so many other figures out there that would be continuing this expansionist, imperialistic, make America great again, even at the downfall of our NATO allies and violating them and doing all this kind of stuff, right? I mean, Donald Trump is surrounded by people that are representative of his own kind of agenda. I mean, J.D. Vance is, in my opinion, no different. His response to the ICE shooting of Renee, his attitude of like, look, these people are doing what they need to do. Renee was some crazy leftist and denying the reality that this woman has been violently murdered and trying to pretend that this is all acceptable in the and then trying to justify the acquisition of Greenland through military force if necessary. This is the same kind of bullshit. So, say what you will about Donald Trump. And look, I still maintain, as an actual entertaining figure, he is the most entertaining figure we've ever seen. But I think the only difference that I have in my worldview right now is that he really is basically like Hitler. I know I was actually laughing at that idea, maybe a year ago, because I couldn't see the comparison. But when we start seeing the dictatorial mentality and so many of the responses he's had to actually, like, for instance, the ICE, see how they're behaving right now in this mentality of actually using them like the Gestapo, wear your papers. This is what we're seeing going on right now in the United States. I could make the argument that, we're basically seeing this parallel. Now, I would make the argument he's definitely more charismatic, and the balls of this guy definitely make him such an interesting figure, but he is behaving like a totalitarian douchebag. But like many of the other presidents of the United States, that haven't been quite as brash with their delivery of this kind of stuff, he is pretty much like most of the presidents we've seen in the United States. I don't think he's been any different, probably just more emboldened to do the things that he's doing right now. So that's my view on it. They're all criminals. I mean, I think since JFK, we really haven't seen, in my opinion, we haven't seen any presidents that are worthy of the title of being a great moral leader. Now, Grant, you can say what you will about JFK in terms of his extramarital affairs and whatnot, all that kind of stuff, but I think people like him at least had some respect for the rule of law, international law, did what they could to prevent World War III. They were people of integrity. I can't say that about Donald Trump. I've never made that argument. I can say he is a courageous figure. Definitely takes balls to do a lot of the shit that he's doing. But he really is a psycho, like many of the other presidents that we've seen before us, and truly has this worldview where he wants to expand the United States at the cost of many innocent lives. And granted, look, his motivations may be, call them what you will, just according to his worldview, but it doesn't make it right if you're willing to violate so many people down the line in order to achieve your ends. That just makes you like all the other conquerors throughout history.
Like your next president, I'm going to say Newsom, he would never do this because, first of all, I don't think he's smart enough. But
What, he would never try to buy a country lawfully? Yeah, he would. But what are you implying here? He would never try to invade a country, try to make a country think you're going to invade him? Probably. But you see, it's so clear to see what is going on here, the implication. But of course, they're still trying to cover themselves. These people have very little integrity, if any. They're basically trying to justify Donald Trump in the invasion of Greenland, in an act of war, egregious violations of international law and the laws of the United States of America, and all while maintaining that, oh no, they're not really advocating for that. This is just it's just playing hardball. If that was the case, we wouldn't have any issue. But that is not the case.
second of all, it's not in his interest. And NATO, like, God bless NATO, but those guys weren't even spending, what did Trump get them to? From like 1% of their GDP
to 3 to 4,
like
right?
3? They should be at 5. Mike, all I'm saying is whatever NATO is now, Trump made NATO that. And if China or Russia attacks somewhere up in the territory you're talking about, it ain't going to be the NATO guys who show up first. It's going to be the U.S. of A. And it'd be nice if we had exactly what we needed on Greenland when they show up.
This is why so many people hate the United States. I mean, because I convinced NATO to expand their budget and to invest more, I now own them. And now they have to listen to me, and I get to invade countries, NATO nations, and you should be on board with me. You owe that to me. Just the entitled, disgusting mentality of these imperialists is so frustrating. The fact that you have to have diplomacy with people like this. I think they need to be called out for what they are. They truly are scum. And look, if what they're saying is true, and look, in fairness, if these people are truly not willing to invade Greenland, and that's all nonsense, by all means, I take it back. But I really don't believe that that's what's going on here. And I think ultimately, and if I'm mistaken about this, I'll eat my words. But I do feel that if Trump was to invade, that these people would be supporting him, which is what I find to be so morally reprehensible. You know, it's one thing to
NATO is a direct.
It's one thing to be in support of to like someone, but if you're going to support the horrible things they're doing, and also if you're going to pretend that they are doing something else to what they say they are actually doing, that's just a very disingenuous game.
Slap in the face to every American. All right? They have free health care for life. They have government-funded pensions. We have $40 trillion in debt. We don't have free health care. We don't have pensions for life. Okay? And a lot of it, and like their economies and their countries exist on the back of our military, on us spending $1 trillion a year on our military. So NATO can do what we tell them or cease to exist. Like it's not, and like it may sound braggadocious to say something like that, but it's the reality. NATO is.
America spends what it does because it's in the interests of America first and foremost. It chooses to have this tremendous military budget because it wants to expand their imperialist goals. Now, just because other countries are not doing that, they don't have this warmongering mentality of the United States, isn't a justification for you to say that, hey, look, because of that, we get to behave like douchebags and do whatever we want. Now, sure, you should try to convince countries to spend more if you're going to be allied with them, or maybe you should just get the hell out of the alliance. If you feel as if members of this alliance are not pulling their own weight, then leave. Right now, I don't think the world wants the United States as part of NATO. You guys have clearly shown that you're not willing to play ball in terms of respect Article 5. So it would be in your interest as well as ours that perhaps you just leave. Who wants to be allied with a country that is going to turn its back on the country any moment? I mean, the people of Greenland have actually gone to war. I mean, many of the troops went to fight with the United States in Afghanistan and other countries. Now, I'm not saying that was right, because Lord knows that was wrong, but they've been your biggest ally. For you to stab in the back right now and say, look, even though the people have expressed we don't want to be sold, and you're basically willing to threaten them by applying tariffs, right? I mean, that's your right to, but really, you're going to be doing that to your allies? And then to say that you're willing to do it by any means necessary, opening the reality to actual physical force in their minds, and then say, oh, no, I'm not saying I'm going to use force to play this bullshit game you're playing, all as a psychological technique to try to get them to fall in line and just sell their country, and then to be pretending that you're friends with them, all in while saying that you're doing this in the interest of the greater good. This just shows the despicable behavior of the United States, that they really are not Superman. They're not this powerful entity that has the world's interest as their number one goal and are willing to play fair. But they really are like Homelander. They are narcissistic psychopaths that are just overrun with power and are playing this game only in line with their best interests, all the while pretending to be the good guys. But deep down, we all know that they are really the great Satan of the world. They really are the empire, the axis of evil. And I think it needs to be said, America is not a good country. And their behavior of the last several decades has only substantiated that.
It's a joke. There are some countries that punch above their weight in this block, but it's not like you have Germans and a lot of these other countries practicing with wooden weapons because they don't have the money for ammunition. Like, this is, it's laughable, and somehow it's a crime that Trump says this out loud, right? And so,
no, it's not a crime that Trump says this out loud. It's a crime that Trump wants to use force in order to invade a country in order to achieve his ends. That's a straw man argument.
And this makes sense for Denmark. This will be a meaningful amount of revenue. If you can get up to $20 billion of annual revenue with the 50-50 split, and they tried this in the first Trump administration. They tried to strike a deal with Greenland and Denmark, and it didn't quite get there. I think they have to get it over the line now because, Trump is a deal maker. But, their government brings in $200 billion a year, another $10 billion to that government. That matters.
You're talking about
That's
$20 billion a year in revenue to Greenland?
10.
That would make everybody in that island a millionaire multi-times over.
Yeah, money isn't everything. Not everyone wants to be a millionaire. Some people don't value wealth like you do. Some people value their integrity. They just don't want to be part of a pedophile organization or some kind of horrible empire that fucking destroys people. How about that? Well, you get lots of money out of it. I think people have a right to not want to be associated with an empire like that, and it's so weird to me that people don't have the capacity to understand why not everything is about money to some people.
There's like 56,000
Well,
people
there's
on that
rumors of if you pay a couple million to buy them out, like the people are thrilled because they're all
You
millionaires.
make a multi-million.
Give me a U.S. passport too. So this works for everybody. So the pushback leads me to believe that these European leaders that are pushing it back are on the take.
That's the most American thing that you could possibly say. Well, you could make so much money out of it, so the fact that you don't want to join, even though it would require you to be part of America and lose your autonomy, and now maybe later down the line have to pay tax and have to be involved in just being associated with a country that no one really likes right now, I couldn't possibly conceive of why you wouldn't want that. And now, well, I have to go with conspiracy theories. Your politicians must be on the take. It's such a ludicrous proposition for someone to make. Not every country thinks America is this great bastion of freedom. And some people, and look, here's the thing. I will say this: if Donald Trump is able to form some kind of deal with the citizens of Greenland, by all means, fantastic, good for them. I don't know what's in their interest what's in the best interest of Greenland. I'm willing to respect whatever decision they make. I don't think it's a good idea, but yeah, good for you and good for them. But the reality is that's not where you're headed with this game. And when NATO nations are sending troops in order to defend Greenland because of the threats that your president has made in the fact that he's willing to use whatever means is necessary, which would also include physical force, kinetic violence, then it's completely disingenuous to pretend that this is not what this is all about. To try to present this narrative that this is all about business is moving away from the reality that this is all about war. This is all about World War III and the fact that America is behaving in a very dangerous way. Because on one hand, we have a situation in Iran where the Iranian government is basically launching intercontinental missiles now. I mean, they just did a test recently where they have access to that. So you have a war on that front, then you have the whole Venezuela situation, and then your government is making threats on invading Greenland when it's a NATO country, and NATO countries are saying, look, we're not on board with this shit, and if you invade, well, we're going to have to fight you, which may lead to World War III. And then on the other hand, China and Russia, which have said, look, we don't have any interest in taking over Greenland, even though that's the argument from Trump, right? But if you guys do invade Greenland, we will have an interest in it now. Your actions are effectively leading to World War III. But by any stretch of the imagination, by you actually taking hold of Greenland, even lawfully, is what is most likely going to incite more of a contentious World War III scenario. So it seems as if you guys are the ones that are behaving in a very mentally disturbing fashion. Anyway, ladies and gents, they're my thoughts on what may be the catalyst to World War III right now. But let us know in the comments below how you see the situation playing forth. Does America need to tap into its imperialistic roots and become to truly become like Homelander and disregard the wishes of Greenland and carry on to become the the imperialistic country that it very much is? Or does it need to respect the sovereignty of countries and do things lawfully and actually respect the natural rights of its citizens? Until next time, as I often say, there are three things that cannot remain hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Kisses, hugs, and belly rubs. Signing out, your boy, Krishool. Peace. Ow!
I don't even care where this phone leads.